I'm Susan McGinnis with Clean Skies News. We know climate change is a top-tier issue for Congress right now. With the Waxman-Markey bill finally passing the House and sitting in the Senate, the question remains, will the U.S. bring legislation to the table at the December climate talks in Copenhagen? Joining me now to talk about this and more, somebody familiar with climate change and the legislation, is Joe Romm. He is Senior Fellow with the Center for American Progress, also author of the book Hell and High Water, Global Warming, the Solution and the Politics. He also oversees their blog, climateprogress.org. Joe, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Tell me what your overall view of the climate change action in this administration and whether you think something is going to be finished by December.
Well, I think the administration has done a lot on clean energy. The stimulus bill had $90 billion for clean energy. They announced major fuel economy regulations. The Waxman-Markey bill would certainly be the first climate bill in U.S. history, and the first, frankly, clean air bill in 2 decades. So it's a big deal. It's not perfect. Some of the elements of it are too weak, but it's a very, it would transform the U.S. economy.
If something's not passed by December for talks in Copenhagen, not that big of a deal?
I don't know that it's crucial. I expect the Senator Boxer's Environment and Public Works Committee, she has announced she will have a bill to work with on the first week in September after Labor Day.
Now, you have criticized James Hansen, a scientist at NASA, and others for saying that Waxman-Markey isn't really going to accomplish anything. And there's a big debate over this among environmentalists themselves. What's the reaction you're getting from what you've said?
Well, I've gotten some very, positive reaction. Look, this is a tough issue. From a pure scientific point of view, global warming is a pretty dire issue, and we need stronger action than is in Waxman-Markey. But, the political system will only do what the political system can do. I think everyone should work for a stronger bill. But this bill would require a 42% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2030 and an 83% reduction by 2050. So it would transform the U.S. economy in a matter of decades.
So does that surprise you then that so many longtime environmental allies are now splitting on this? They're arguing with each other to not be able to come together for something this important.
Well, it often happens that the people who want the most have to make a decision. Do they compromise, or do they remain pushing that which they think is needed? I will say we need a stronger bill. But no one should mistake, this bill would transform the U.S. economy. This bill would push huge amounts of energy efficiency and renewable energy and natural gas into the marketplace. It would sharply reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and most importantly, it would allow us to negotiate internationally. Because right now, for the last decade, the United States has been the bad actor. We have done nothing on climate. We have tried to block others from taking any action. If we can pass this bill, and I don't think it's going to be law this year, because it's got to go through the Senate committees. It then has to get passed by the Senate, which is going to take a few weeks. Then it's got to get reconciled with the House bill and then voted on by the House and Senate again. So if there's a bill, it will not be until next year. But I think there's at least a 50-50 chance the Senate will vote on it before the December Copenhagen meeting. Okay.
Now, Hansen was out this past week talking about a carbon tax. Now, you reject that notion. You are pushing for cap and trade?
Well, I've said, he can tout Betamax if he wants to.
It's just not going to happen.
The ship sailed on it. This is the bill. This is the bill that the House has done. This is the bill the President has endorsed. This is the bill. So, yeah.
Now, is that what you mean when you say that Hansen has the science right, but the energy strategy wrong? That's one of the things?
Look, he is our top climate scientist, and he inspired me. He's a major reason I wrote my book and started climateprogress.org. But, if he wants a stronger bill, then I would urge him to lead scientists in educating the public and the media and policymakers that we need a stronger bill. But right now, unfortunately, the way the U.S. political system is, particularly with the Republican Party being mostly dead set against doing anything, you have to negotiate among Democrats, and that does allow, a handful of moderate and conservative Democrats to have their way.
You've also written a bit about the general public's understanding of the seriousness of these issues. Do you think that few people really do realize how dire things are?
I find that most Americans do not understand how dire the situation is, that we have to dramatically reduce our greenhouse gas emissions over the next few decades, not just at home, but around the world, or else we are facing very serious consequences. And just 1 month ago, the administration put out a report by 13 federal agencies which said we're facing 10-degree Fahrenheit warming over most of the country, 3 to 4 feet of sea level rise, massive dust bowls over the Southwest if we don't reverse course soon. So yes, the situation is very dire, and I think that over time people will come to realize that. I think over the next decade we're going to see heat waves, droughts like we see in Australia, brutal storms. So I think it's going to become more and more obvious, but we have to start acting now.
And you also say that better journalism could help do that job as well. What would you like to see that you're not seeing, as these energy issues start to become mainstream?
Well, I'd like to see more. For instance, just an example, the New York Times, which in general has pretty good climate coverage, has done 2 major stories on bark beetles devastating western trees and leading to record wildfires in the West. Now, most scientists, and ascribe a lot of that to warming, because the bark beetles would normally be killed, the larvae, in the cold winters. Plus, when the hot summers occur, it's easier for them to feed on the trees because the trees can't put out sap and kill them. So climate change is causing the bark beetle infestation. But like I said, the last 2 articles in the New York Times, and frankly an NBC News story on bark beetles, never made the connection. And if the media doesn't make the connection for the public, then how are they going to know that the changes we're seeing are in fact what scientists have been predicting?
Okay, so improved journalism, improved general public knowledge about this. What else is needed? Does the leadership have what is needed, what it takes?
Well, I'd be honest with you, I think that President Obama has not done enough. I'd sort of grade him, I'd give him at best a B on messaging. He has been very clear again and again that the nation that leads the world on clean energy this century will lead the world in jobs, and I agree with that. But he's now devoting all of his effort to passing the health care bill, which is certainly important, but so is the climate bill. And I think he will need to go out and give talks and have workshops and give a primetime speech and really press the flesh and educate the public and send his cabinet to do what they're doing on health care on global warming.
And you've said what is needed is a multi-$100 billion sized government action, the kind of action that only happens when a true crisis is pending. Do you think we'll get to the point of realization of that?
Well, I think that the government doesn't have to do most of the spending. The government has to set the rules with the cap and trade bill, create a price for pollution, and then the market will figure it out. I do think, and you asked what else do we need, the other thing we need is a deal with China. And right now, 2 of Chinese American cabinet secretaries, Locke and Chu, are over in China negotiating some terms of a deal. And I think China is prepared to take strong action on climate. They're already trying to eat our lunch on clean energy. They're the #1 wind turbine maker. They're the #1 solar maker. They're trying to corner the market on batteries and electric cars. So, I think that the deal is there to be grabbed with China. I think if the Senate can pass a reasonably strong bill, I think it can all come together. I don't know if we're not going to solve the problem this year, but I think we can get on the road to solving it.
Okay, and we can find out more of your thoughts on your blog, which is?
climateprogress.org.
Okay, we'll check it out. Joe Romm with the Center for American Progress. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I'm Susan McGinnis, Clean Skies News.